The human brain creates the world in its own image. It uses its internal systems and structures as the template for the social and political world we live in. So if we change the way we use our brains, we can change the world our brains create. This is the basis of the new way of thinking I call integrated thinking, the new IT, which is also the title of my book. But before we change anything, it helps to know how it works. So this video is going to show how the brain operates, how to make best use of all the different parts, and how to develop integrated thinking. The brain is like the body, made up of many parts with different functions, all working together. Each part plays a vital role in our lives and in the human story. The story began, we are told in the Bible, in a garden with two trees, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Today, science tells the same story, it just uses different words. The tree of knowledge is a good way to describe how the brain processes information, or IQ, and the tree of life is a lovely image for the way the brain helps us progress as people, or EQ. Information processing should support our progress as people, not dominate it. If we bring the two functions back together, then we can see ourselves and the world in a new way. These pictures show how. An American psychologist I was working with saw the brain divided up like the left-hand picture. I saw it like the right-hand one. We could have argued about who was correct. Instead, I put the two together and found they made a new picture. And this is the key to integrated thinking. If we bring different ways of seeing things together, then we can create something new. We begin our journey around the brain by looking at ourselves as if in a mirror. We will climb the tree of knowledge first and look at how the brain processes information. We are all unique, but we all share the same basic brain features. A simplified diagram helps us identify what lies behind that face in the mirror. This diagram shows the brain's four main parts with a connecting bridge at the central crossroads. We will look at the primal brain, the two sides of the new brain, and the forebrain separately, then at how they work together. Of course, in a real brain, there are no clear dividing lines. As we move from one part to another, the way we think and behave changes. The first part to develop in a baby and in mankind itself is the primal brain behind the mouth. Someone once said that it is the primal brain that is responsible for the 4 F's: fight, flight, food, and sexual intercourse. Many television programs, films, and even people's lives are still dominated by these primal drives. The primal brain learns by repetition, habit, and images. Its prime concern is for our physical survival. To do its work, it relies on two very ancient inherited systems. First, from the age of cold-blooded reptiles, is the reptilian core, or serpent. It is our autopilot, taking care of the body's automatic responses like eating, breathing, sleeping, and so on. From the days of man the hunter, the serpent's world has been the competitive jungle. The serpent also takes over things we learn later in life, once they become automatic, like driving a car, and when we are tired or stressed. The serpent is our default mode. Its automatic programs seem to be taking over our lives, like the computer, which is rather like the brain's autopilot. The serpent is not good at change, like crocodiles unchanged since the age of dinosaurs, and some outdated habits are now holding us back. In order to change old habits and move on, we need the other ancient survival mechanism of the primal brain, the limbic system or emotional wheel, from the age of warm-blooded mammals. It adapts to change more easily than the serpent and is a complete circle, unlike the broken S-bend of the serpent. It helps us move, change, and care for others, not just our own survival. The emotional wheel helps us care for the young, the old, the sick, not kill them like a predator would. On the human journey, we moved from the jungle to building societies, and so a baby too moves from survival mode to the socializing part of the brain, retracing in its brain development the story of human development. The new brain, or neocortex, is divided in two, one on each side of the head, like the eyes, and it is the right side which develops in childhood. The right side of the new brain, remember we are looking as if in a mirror, processes information in terms of circles, like the family circle, connections, communication and relationships. It tends to be more developed in women, and it is in the family circle that we first learn to adapt to society's norms and authority. The right side can do lots of things at once and continues to be stronger in Eastern thinking, where many still read from right to left. The right side likes to bring people together and is concerned with me as part of us, as members of a group, community or union. It has been called the empathizing brain, and it focuses on cooperation and what we have in common, not on competition. But many in the East are now following the West. For in the West, it is the left side of the new brain that has become very dominant in men, business and science since the Industrial Revolution. Today, young people in the West cross over into the left side from the family circle at adolescence. The left side of the new brain deals with one thing at a time, is strong on systemizing, and likes to take things apart to analyze them. It sees the world in terms of lines, like the bottom line, or one crop in straight lines in agriculture. The left side focuses on divisions, facts, figures and personal choice. It is very concerned with I as an individual and independence, like the lonely cowboy rather than the neighbourly settler. Sometimes the I or ego of the left side can become too big and turn into the mighty I, like the mighty US, the sole superpower, became the global cowboy. But these differences between the two sides are not just in our heads. They are in the systems and societies our brains have created. There used to be a division of labour between men and women. Women changed that. In education, there used to be a division between boys studying science and girls studying literature. In business, there used to be a division between line management versus the unions and teamwork. In politics, we had private enterprise and personal ownership against socialism and public ownership. New Labour changed that. These global, social and political changes are leading to an overweight left side, often literally, which takes most of the resources from the other parts of the brain. And the demand for personal choice is leaving vulnerable those who depend on the group: the young, the old, the sick, and public services. It is not a question of whether we have a male or female brain. We all have two sides of the new brain, and we need both to work together. When men and women come together, they can create something new and original, a baby. It is the same with the brain. When both sides of the new brain come together, then we can create something new by making best use of the part of the brain which matures after adolescence. This is the forebrain, or frontal lobes behind the forehead. It sees life's hidden patterns, can foresee the consequences of our actions, and restrain lower brain activities. It is also the source of creativity, imagination, wisdom, and spirituality. Spirituality is not the routines and rituals of religion, but the opening of the mind's eye of consciousness and conscience, and the so-called God spot. This ecstasy spot can be lit up by whatever we worship: money, fame, sport, and by the abuse of sex, drink and drugs, which take the fast track to the brain's mountain peak, but also the fast track down into a pit, as we shall see. But if the natural way of development is blocked, then young people will find their own shortcut to the brain's peak experiences. We have taken the narrow, winding path to the brain's crown, so let's look at the differences between what the four parts see. Let's take time as an example. To the primal brain, time means now, now, now. To the right side, it means cycles of seasons and anniversaries. To the left side, it means deadlines and efficiency, while to the forebrain, time can be lost in imagination and concentration. Which parts do you think we use most in the West today? Many would say now, now, now and deadlines. But if this is how differently we can see time, which can be measured, Think what the 4 parts of the brain and the 4 corners of the world can do with a concept like God. This 4-part cycle, like the gears in a car, is the way we move forward, able to respond to changing situations in the most appropriate way. The problem is, most of us tend to favour one part over the others, so differences of viewpoints can cause conflict. If we overuse one part at the expense of the others, the whole system can break down, like driving a car using one gear only. But it is never too late to develop all the parts, for the brain is incredibly flexible. The 4 parts of the brain are designed to develop in stages over time. To develop integrated thinking, we need to bring the information from all the parts together. This is the role of the corpus callosum, or wounded body, at the central crossroads of the brain. It runs from the back of the head to the bridge of the nose. The wounded body integrates the brain's information so we see the whole picture and have integrity. With integrity, what we say is what we do. Without integrity, we damage the wounded body further. Psychology calls this inner pain cognitive dissonance. Religion calls it sin. This image is Christian, but the need for integration is universal. The bridge at the central crossroads is critical at 2 key stages in life, in adolescence and in midlife. But instead of a crossing bridge, in many people and in many places there is a wall, like the Berlin Wall, or the wall on the left bank in Israel, increasing separation and conflict. The wall can divide north and south too, separating the forebrain's vision from the primal brain's practical reality. In the world outside, this is reflected in the north-south economic divide or the north-south political divide between people in the American Civil War or in Korea or Ireland. As I said at the beginning, the brain creates the world in its own image. Men seem more likely to have an inner wall and women a crossing bridge for biological and social reasons. These composite brain scans were from 2 groups of people in an experiment at Yale University by Dr. Shaywitz. The red spots show high-level brain activity. One group brain scan showed activity on both sides. It was the scan of the female students. However, as men take a greater role in the family circle, I would expect these results to change. Yet in the West, the left side sometimes seems to have divided itself off from the rest of the brain to become like an island, like Britain, where we even drive on the left side of the road. But Britain has been joined to Europe by a tunnel, and we may have to go into a tunnel under the inner wall to rejoin the 2 sides of the brain. A journey into a tunnel is often a feature of midlife, when teenagers challenge authority, like terrorists are challenging the West today. Could the world be facing its own global midlife crisis? If so, it began on the 11th of September 2001. The attack on the heart of world trade was like a human heart attack, coming out of the blue, when survival itself was threatened. The US did survive, but did it change its way of thinking? We have seen how the development of the brain is reflected in the story of life on Earth. In both the brain and the world, there are different parts at differing stages of development, often in conflict. Many parts of the brain and the world are now neglected, exhausted, or polluted. Information is not enough to help us progress. We need now to turn to the tree of life, which is a more familiar idea to those in the East. At the base of the tree is the emotional wheel of the primal brain. Like the invention of the wheel in history, the emotional wheel plays a key role in the story of our development, because emotion is energy in motion, the energy of life moving us to reach upwards like a tree reaches for the sky. The wheel is part of our mammal heritage, and animals can behave in ways we associate with emotion, such as elephants grieving for their dead, or in the compassion of dogs for the blind. But emotional energy is more than behaviour. It is the foundation for psychological, moral and spiritual growth, and key to our decision-making processes. The emotional wheel is our motor or motivation connected to the will. As it turns, it creates a field of energy around us. The energy has to flow through all four basic emotions of anger, fear, grief and compassion to complete the cycle and move on to higher levels. All emotions are essential for well-being and growth. If the tension or arousal on one side is not released or relieved on the other, an overload can build up in the brain that we call stress. To protect the brain, the overload falls into the underground pit of the unconscious. However, tension can be released naturally in relaxation, exercise or sex, or it can be released in blood, sweat or tears, our own or those of others. The energy has to be released somehow. It does not disappear. Crossing over into grief by saying sorry and asking for forgiveness, for example, keeps the energy flowing safely over the pit's trap door. But saying sorry is very hard for a mighty I. Grief is also grieving for what is missing in our lives. What is missing in the West today? Is it money, power or possessions? In a world where we seem to have created a rat run between the primal brain's now, and the left side's ego demands driven by the anger and fear of competition, many feel that what is missing most is the final quarter of the wheel, compassion. This is what Princess Diana and many others, and most religions, have tried to show us. And what is missing even more from many lives is trust, hope and love. Remember the image of the wounded body on the cross at the centre of the brain that tries to integrate all the different parts so we have integrity. It is trust, hope and love that can heal the damage we do to ourselves and others when we have acted without integrity. But what do we do with the one great source of love, hope and trust which comes into the world every second? Millions of children die every year before they are 1 year old because of lack of food and basic health care. The end of their journey on earth, but not the end of the human story. If we change the way we use our brains and integrate all the different parts, we can rewrite that script. To do that, we have to climb the tree of life. The plan for this journey was not made up by me. It has been understood since ancient times. The symbol of entwining pathways around a central core is reflected in our DNA, the symbol of healing, the Kabbalah tree, the chakras of yoga, the Native American medicine wheel, and so on. With a plan, we can see where we are, where we are going, what we've missed out, and where to avoid taking a wrong turn. First, we have to see what happens when the energy does not flow around to the other side of the emotional wheel in the primal brain, but goes down the S-bend of the serpent, through the trap door and into the unconscious pit. The unconscious is just doing its job, storing the unused and overused wasted energy, waiting to recycle it. But like the earth, it wasn't designed to cope with what we have thrown at it. In this twisted underground world, the unreleased anger can breed over time into venomous hatred, fear into terror, grief into vengeance, and compassion into obsession, which includes all forms of addiction, such as alcohol or drugs. The weight of this overload can work against change, taking us into reverse gear, back to lower levels of thinking and behaving. Today, many television programs, games and the internet show us how this world works and how it is dominated by violence, pornography and crime. And these are the social norms that many children are viewing and copying. What they see is what they do. It is how they learn about the world around them. But whose world? Is the unconscious world of fantasy, nightmare and murder what human evolution has been for? This underground world is driven by greed and money. Capitalism is a system for things, like goods, services and money. But people are more than competitors and consumers. We need a better system to help people progress to their full potential. Yet the human unconscious is not the bottom of the pit. Underneath the unconscious is the cold, subhuman and inhuman world of corruption, sadism and destruction. The fiery hell of a still molten core can burst to the surface sometimes, like the Earth's volcanoes or a tsunami, in acts of evil such as concentration camps, mass slaughter or terrorism. The image for the gatekeeper to this underworld used to be the devil. A more modern view is of a spin doctor, twisting the truth just a quarter turn. We all have one. It says things like, "Everyone does it, nothing to do with me, I am always right." But there is another voice we can listen to, and another world we can recreate. The voice of conscience and the world of consciousness. To do that, we have to climb further up the tree of life. If the primal brain's emotional wheel does complete its cycle, the energy can flow into the new brain. Here, anger becomes justified or righteous anger, fear becomes respect, grief becomes regret, and compassion becomes empathy, the essential qualities of psychological growth, a fair society, and democracy. When the emotional energy reaches the forebrain, justified anger becomes justice, respect becomes honour, regret becomes responsibility, and empathy becomes mercy, the highest concepts we know in law and morality. The forebrain's third eye is a door into the unseen world above the tree of life. Here, instead of anger, we feel love for our enemies. In place of fear, there is only trust, and instead of tears, there is hope. Could our brains create a world in this image, instead of a polluted unconscious creating a replica of its world through us? The central core of the tree of life is passion. At lower levels it is sexual, at higher levels it is spiritual passion. But this plan that brings the tree of knowledge and the tree of life together is just the beginning. Above the human brain is the world of the superhuman mind. The brain is limited by time and place, the mind is not. The mind is our minder, also called the Atman, our true self, or the Christ within. Its role is to serve humanity, but it can do more. With the mind as the brain's master, not its servant, we can all go where no man has gone before, or woman. The Starship Enterprise is a modern image for the mind, travelling at the speed of light, its crew symbolising the mind's superhuman powers of healing, communication and knowledge. There is even an invisible godlike mission control in charge. But before we take to the skies, is there something we have forgotten? What about all those underdeveloped or exhausted parts of ourselves we have neglected for so long? If we are to bring the two trees together and transform the world's inside and out from a wasteland and into a new garden, as they have done at the Eden Project, we have to reclaim and integrate the lost parts of ourselves from the serpent's pit and leave the unconscious to do its work of completing unfinished business. This process of integration is one of the aims of the critical midlife stage, on the world stage too. For without the integration of internal unity, like the consent of the United Nations, there is a danger that when the inner wall falls, the lower levels below the unconscious will flood out and fill the gap. When the Berlin Wall fell, in rushed the mafia, and when Baghdad fell, anarchy took over. And now in Iraq and many other places, the bottom of the pit has come to the surface. But with integration, when that inner wall falls and becomes a bridge between male and female, west and east, rich and poor, there is great joy as at a wedding. Then comes the hard work of building a new way of thinking, like building a new life in a marriage. This new way of thinking, which integrates all the different parts of the brain with the mind and the unconscious, and links human and global development, is the basis of integrated thinking, the new IT. The Berlin Wall between West and East came down 25 years ago in the world outside, and inside, every time a wall falls, it can become a bridge of understanding. Thank you.